What am I from my heart place to your heart place, Aubrey Nation, to Heart Place Hospital podcast?
Thank you, Jacqui. I'm honoured to be here. I'm very, very grateful for you having me on.
Yay. I love starting how I know the guest, and you and I are Insta buddies. And my biggest claim to fame with you is that I popped your cherry for your first mine.
Yes, you did. You definitely did. Yeah, I remember that quite clearly actually. And because I wasn't on social media prior to starting my business. It was just something that I didn't love. And so it was a big deal for me. But you were just like, you can do it, it's awesome. And it was such a lovely conversation. It was just so nice. And I was like, that was easy. Thanks, Jacqui. But yeah, I do remember that really clearly, which is funny.
I've done it to a few people now. But I remember the feeling well. I remember mine was 3 years ago when I did my first live on social media, and I was literally kicking my pants. But I think if I'd done it the feminine way in collaboration, it would have been so much more pleasant. So yeah, it's my pleasure, absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And you're right, it does make such a difference. As you say, when we get to connect with somebody else, it makes the world a difference. It doesn't feel like you're just speaking to a camera and talking to yourself. So yeah, it was a beautiful experience. You popping my cherry, I loved it.
But I'd love to share with our listeners who Aubrey Nation is, or you're way more than this, but this is a bio so everyone can get a taste, and then we'll have a flow of conversation, which will be easy. So Aubrey, you're a New Zealand registered nurse. You're a yoga and meditation teacher and wellness expert who specialises in functional genetic testing. You work at the cutting edge of personalised health and supporting people who are up to big things to end the guesswork, trend chasing and one-size-fits-all protocols, and start using nutrition, exercise and lifestyle strategies that are tailored to exactly what they need or what we need. With a strong focus on genetics and personalisation, you help people to understand their bodies, work with their unique physiology, and feel fully empowered to take charge of their health so that they can reach peak well-being, lifelong vitality, and live their lives as their highest and brightest self. Yum.
Yeah, it is. It is yum. It definitely is, compared to what I was in before. So yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more about that. Like, how did you get from what you're in before to the yumminess? Like, what was did you have a Mac truck moment? That's what I refer to mine as, my awakening.
No, I actually didn't.
Did you get the taps on the back of on your shoulder?
Yeah, mine was definitely a longer journey, and to be quite frank, it's actually a little odd that I ended up in nursing altogether. And the reason I say that is because I sort of grew up seeing a functional health practitioner, and we used to see she was a medical herbalist, and that was kind of that was my doctor. Like if there was anything going on for me, that's who I saw. And when we went to see her, she obviously had a whole bunch of herbs and different supplements and things like that. But she would ask us, how are you emotionally? Like what's going on? Like it was just so well-rounded. And so I just thought that was what health was, what it was like to kind of, when you had something going on, somebody would do this really comprehensive approach for you. And then I did have inklings, and there was a few things along the way that people had said about nursing. And I think actually my mum had seen a psychic years before, and she had said that her daughter was going to be a nurse. So I don't know whether these little things kind of just implanted in me, and I ended up in nursing. And I am glad that I did, for all that, I've obviously left like that mainstream model now. I do love that I nursed. I really loved learning about the body and the science, and kind of having a really good understanding about our physiology and how it all kind of works. But the problem for me was that there was not ever enough information as to why things happened. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, this person has high blood pressure, or this person comes into the hospital with a cardiac event or something going on. And I was kind of like, okay, well, why? What led them to that? And it was just
Mm,
like, it doesn't really matter, Aubrey. You just treat them
mm,
with this. This is the protocol. Like, this is the things that you do. And I was just like, this doesn't really make any sense to me. And that's something that I need, or I feel like I need for things to make sense. And it just never did. And
mm,
so I really struggled with that. And so that was kind of, I guess, yeah, there was a balance
mm,
that was needed with my upbringing, and then like this I guess more scientific evidence-based approach and that kind of thing. And then because there was no whys, well, I should say I obviously got through my nursing degree and just kind of put together whys and things in my head, and then I thought, okay, well, I don't necessarily like the acute sort of stuff, because I don't feel like I'm sort of helping anyone. I didn't really like the hospital-based environment. And I thought, well, okay, if no one's going to say to them, hey, you could have prevented this, and there's things that you could have done to sort of support yourself, I need to be that person. And so what do? I go into primary healthcare was what I thought the answer was. So that's what I did when I initially left nursing. I worked as a primary healthcare nurse, and let's just say I was a graduate with, thinking she was out going to save the world. And I had a very rude awakening that it just wasn't that easy. And people didn't necessarily want the support, didn't want the information and the care. And to be fair, some people, even when they did, the information that we were told that we had to say to people wasn't accurate. It wasn't up to date with kind of like all of the new science. And I just really struggled with that.
yeah. So
Um,
is that like
yeah,
your moral compass was out of alignment in that?
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I just want to reflect back. I love that you've got no regrets that you went through that science model, and I call ourselves the bridges. So we've experienced experienced the science and still really curious and passionate about it. I love seeing the science to cutting edge modalities. And they're there, they're all there, they're all accessible. And then I love, and I think this is something that you've probably learned as well, is love being able to share the truth as well. So I guess in that primary care model, time constraints and and stress levels and things like that, then it wasn't necessarily encouraged to give that full whole health model. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I suppose I want to be really clear in that it's not the medical model is where all the science sits and that's it. And then there's like an alternative world that they
Yeah.
just it's woo-woo and we don't have any science, and it's completely not true. Often it's just a matter of the science catching up, or the well, yeah, one, the science actually catching up, but two, in the medical model is the protocols and all of the paperwork and
Mm,
all of that catching up.
mm,
And so the nice thing is, yeah, often the functional world is hugely backed by science. It's just more an up-to-date kind of stuff, as opposed to, we don't have to go through the same yeah, protocols and, changing all of the evidence, or changing what, needs to happen in, a big hospital system and all of that kind of thing. It just takes so much more time, which is so unfortunate, because it does mean that a lot of the practices are so ancient,
mm.
really.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think you've highlighted it too, from that kind of hospital model or acute model. You're symptom controlling, band-aiding, whereas when you get down to the functions or the cell levels, you're actually getting to root cause, and that's where your genetic functional medicine comes in. Are you able to share a little bit more about that? Because it'll be quite new for a lot of the listeners to actually know
Yeah.
it exists. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And that is the thing I do, because it is a relatively sort of new science law. People do often think, oh, genetics, it kind of scares them a little bit. And often I have people say to me, I just don't want to know. Like, I don't want to find out, if I'm going to have any illness and things like that. And I guess that's where a lot of my work is educating as well about, hey, that's not what we're sort of looking at. And there is that realm of genetics, and it's more clinical based, it's more medicine. And unfortunately, there are genetic diseases that are extremely rare, by the way. That it doesn't matter what you do in your lifestyle, with your stress, with your nutrition, with your movement, that's not going to have any effect on your disease, on that disease outcome, right? It is what it is. And it's unfortunate, but they do exist. Whereas the genetic testing I do is it, the name says, it's more functional. So we're looking at sort of a series of genes that are able to sort of see, okay, these are the drivers behind disease. And for example, one of them is like inflammation, for example, that, is a huge driver behind a lot of the diseases now, cardiovascular, cancers, even just hormone imbalances and things like that. So not even the big ones, but, for women with polycystic ovaries, or even just down to like your general PMS symptoms and things. A lot of the driving factor behind that is inflammation. And what we can do is we can look at your genes and we can say, oh, okay, Jacqui, you are more prone to like an inflammatory response or a sort of exacerbation in your inflammatory pathways. That is fine. There's no destiny there. There's no, this means you're going to end up with X disease. But what we do see is that, okay, well, we need to focus more on anti-inflammatory kind of environment for you. What are the nutrition protocols we can put in place? What types of movement do you need to be doing, and how often, do you need to be doing that? Like, for example, for people with a lot of inflammation or that are prone to that, like exercising every day is not going to be a good thing for you. You need more rest and recovery. So it's being able to see where your, and I use sort of quote unquote weaknesses are, and being able to kind of support them so that they start to function as strengths, and you give them the environment they need to function well. And that's the coolest thing about it, because we've got control over that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So I'm just thinking, like, because people, me included, get like, am I meant to be eating gluten-free? Am I meant to am I meant to be doing cardio? Am I meant to be doing more rest and repair? Like, and so you just get a little bit overwhelmed. And so you're giving a more inside picture of an individualized makeup. And then I guess be really curious. I'd love to hear, like, how does that manifest for someone? Like, do they then start feeling like they can tap in to their own innate knowing and access that information too, as with having that science next to it?
Yeah, that's the thing I think I love about it the most, is because I totally understand, I hear that, and that's why most people come to see me, because there's just information overwhelm, right? And even I get completely overwhelmed with all the information that's out there, and you can get down some rabbit holes and think, oh, I should or shouldn't be doing this. But the reality is, me, and why I chose this path, is that, okay, my genes are what makes me. You've got your own set, like everyone is so individual, and those are the things that make you you. So why not look at that to guide you as to what you do and don't need? The coolest thing about that too is, like you said, people then start to take a lot more ownership and start to feel like, yeah, okay, I've actually know what I need, because these are my genes. Like, this is kind of like what makes me. And so they do have a lot more ownership. They do have a lot more of a kind of an understanding and light bulb moments as to, oh, that's why I was feeling those symptoms, or that's why that was going on, because they can kind of see it. It's like an inside look at what's, your blueprint, really, the thing that makes you you. So yeah, it does give people a lot of insight and a lot of kind of those light bulb moments to really feel like, great, I've got an understanding and finally got an answer as to, why I sort of experience things in a certain way. So yeah, it's amazing.
I think a lot of us have bridged the two worlds, and I'm talking more conventional and what I call innovative, or integrative, like actually understanding and celebrating our own body and mind is so empowering for us. And it's just interesting that it takes, it's not part of mainstream, like it's not in our school system or in our homes, and so then it takes what I call, the taps on the shoulder or the 4x4 on the back of the head or the mat trap moment before you actually take some action. And it'll be cool to see it more mainstream. So I know like yours is a private business, and so I'm just really curious, like how do you think it, how do you see it, like how has it been for you to show up, you're colouring outside the square, you're speaking a different language to a lot of people. How has that been for you to create that business, and then how do you see it going forward so that it's more available?
Yeah. I was going to say it's been challenging. It's been challenging in terms of being able to, I guess, tell people how it works and allow them to see the benefit in it and not be scared or freaked out by it. Because there's a lot of stuff around sort of genetics, like I said, clinical stuff, and people think, okay, when they're told often by their doctors that, hey, this is, in your family history and it's just a genetic thing. So people often see that as a not so great thing, and it's outside of their control and outside of them. And so I guess trying to flip the script a lot and say, hey, you've actually got way more control than you've ever been led to believe, has been probably one of the more challenging things, but also the big drives behind why I've wanted to do it. Because, as I said, I was always wanting to know more about the whys, and that is really what I see as what I do essentially, is giving people answers and whys behind things and allowing them to kind of have a better understanding of their body. Because once we do, like you say, we can take a lot more ownership, we can take a lot more of our autonomy back. And that was the thing that I always saw was missing in mainstream health and conventional healthcare. Just people's autonomy gone, really.
And that's at Heart Place Hospital. It's supporting people to heal their boundary wounds so that they can release some of these limiting beliefs, or all of the limiting beliefs, and heal the wounds that, and some of them are generational, some of them have been passed on, and that's through linguistics or behaviour or all those sorts of things, food, the way we move, the way we live, our environments, our experiences, so many things. And then learning to advocate for ourselves and others. So learning to be able to go, actually, you know what, I'm not feeling that, but actually learning what that feeling is. So I know for me, 8 years ago when I had my big awakening, I actually had to put emotions and feelings, lists of emotions and feelings on my fridge, because I really only knew happy and sad. I hadn't really been exposed to lots of other emotions and feelings. So since I've really learned how to embody, be somatic, then I'm able to really understand and celebrate. I'm able to take action on what's coming through at a more kind of earlier stage before anything is acute or chronic. So I found that really super powerful. And then the last one is crafting a life to best suit you. So a lot of people, and I was the same. I lived in the city for 4 decades because that's all I really knew, and then took radical action a couple of years ago and moved rurally, and definitely takes, some chesticles to take these radical actions, but when you see how it impacts your life, it puts you back in flow and in alignment, and you feel a sense of joy and peace, and then your body responds. So I'd be really curious, like how have you, I know you're on social media, but how do you attract people? How do people find you to, are you finding that there is a bit of an explanation? Are you finding that it's been challenging to build a network?
I live rurally too, so that has been a bit of a challenge. I do heavily rely on social media, but my probably it's word of mouth for me. I'm lucky enough to have worked with some amazing clients now who have said to people, "Hey, this is amazing. You need to do it." And so a lot of that has been kind of where I've got clients and things from, but I think the biggest thing for me too is being able to speak with people and in person and being able to have conversations like this because you can really, I suppose, get into the nitty gritty and be able to share and you can hear people's passion, right? Like I always, when I hear you talk about sort of Heart Place Hospital and the things that you're doing, you hear people's passion, you hear why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah. And so it's probably putting myself in more positions like like this and being able to have conversations and allow people to kind of hear the passion and the drive and the why you're doing something. And I feel like most people are drawn to that. Often people say to me, yeah, as soon as you start talking about this, you could just tell you love it because you kind of light up and all of that kind of thing. And you can really see that in people with their businesses and things. And as I said, like I see it in you all the time when you're talking about Heart Place Hospital. It's just that person is on their path, right?
Yeah, and that's what happens here with us supporting our frontliners. So often we start, they've had their Mack truck, and they're in burnout, and it's their awe-inspiring body saying that they're out of alignment. So we're able to through these podcasts, through our workshops and satellite clinics, we're able to share with them that that's our body giving us a message, and here's some examples of others who've been in those positions and then gone from a hot mess to a hot healed success, or gone from surviving to thriving, and it's the boundaries, it's the advocating, and it's the life that best suits us. But what I love with you is that you can actually give some fundamental proof as well. So as people are starting to learn to really reconnect with their bodies, then you've actually got it, you've got it laid out to them in science form, which is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that is a big part of why I do love it, because it is some proof, it is some evidence, it is something to really sort of ground yourself in and realize, okay, this is me. But in saying that, I do obviously still have a strong belief that there's what we do from that, and that is so well-rounded. And like there's not just, okay, well, now we need to change, the way that you eat and how you move your body. It's kind of like, okay, well, what does this mean for you? How does this fit into your life? What are the healing modalities you need, knowing this about yourself, and the things that you can start incorporating that are going to support you on a full sort of body level? It's not just kind of rigid and like this is the science and that's it. Because
take these supplements and you're off. Yeah.
And for all of, like I said, I don't want to discredit that, but there's a whole lot more to our healing, and there's a whole lot more to our bodies and things that is just beyond all of that. I mean, people feel it, right? Like you go to the beach, or for me, you climb up a mountain and you look at a view, and it's you cannot put that into words, like what that's doing, but like on a soul level, there's something in that. And so it's kind of being able to say to people, hey, yes, look, there's some evidence, this is some science, this is some nutrients and some supplements and all those things that like will support you, but there's more too. And like I said, or as you said in my bio, I did do a yoga teacher training, in part to take a wee bit of a break from nursing and just do something a bit different. And I often see now, like what I learned there is all of the science is catching up with what the yogis have been saying for years, and which is always the way. And so that's the thing. It's kind of nice that I'm able to bring those modalities in as well, and kind of say, okay, here's some science, here's some evidence. As you say, like there's a bit of paper that tells you what's going on for you, but let's look at like the whole picture and what you need.
Next, yeah. And so I'm
that's
really
what I love.
curious, like, I know for many people, and I was no different. I could see the academia, but actually putting the practice into place was really, it took a lot of practice to put the practice in place. And it took a lot of unlearning and remembering, and a lot of somatic practices to put that in place. So you've got your yoga somatic practice, and also I know you're connected with lots of cool kids in this kind of realm that we all hang out with. And so how do you support people? Is it do you do that, or do you refer them on to create a healing roundtable that they've got some people to help them with that unlearning and remembering, so that it really does embody into their somatic self?
Yeah, it really depends on what the person needs. Like obviously a lot of my initial work with somebody is getting them to have a really good understanding of their genetic, rapport, all of that kind of thing, right? Because we've kind of got to start somewhere, and we've got to have a good basis, and that often uncovers a lot more stuff about what we need and what we don't need, especially when we start to implement those things, start to heal, and then the next thing comes up, and on it goes. And so people can either continue, and often I do have people they say we kind of work on something that they're initially coming to me for, energy, or maybe something with their cycles or something like that. We start to look at that, and then people will often say, okay, great, now there's another thing and I want to keep going with that. And so I will continue to work with people, but where there's other practices and healing modalities that are outside of my scope, I'll always refer on and say, hey, actually I think this is the type of thing that you need now, like when you're in this space. And often I've got a wonderful woman that I refer to for sort of psychotherapy and things like that. And people, often when we start healing the physical is when a lot more of that kind of stuff comes up. So it depends on where people are at as to kind of how long we start, or how long we work together. And then often people end up sort of delving into more of their emotional, body.
Yeah. Once you pop, you can't stop, right?
So true. Yeah.
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 Oh, just the curiosity just keeps growing. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is going to head? You know, at the moment you're in a private business, so people have to have the means to access your support. I'm just curious, do you see in the future that this will be something that will be quite mainstream? And I mean, I'm just thinking around our current health and education system, and it just can't sustain what's coming through. And this sort of thing is such an epic way to have some prevention and some knowing, and for people to do exactly what I've said, the wound healing, the boundary healing, the advocacy, and actually living as they're meant to, as they're designed. Do you have any inclination that this could actually become quite accessible to everybody?
Yeah, I do. And I've said that basically for as long as I've been in it, that I do think eventually we'll end up doing, because all the genetic testing is the wee cheek swab, we'll end up sort of cheek swabbing babies, and we'll be able to sort of tailor things, from birth. That has freaked a lot of people out, again, just because of the whole genetic component. But when they start to have an understanding about what that actually means, and being able to see and say, oh, okay, well, my child is more prone to having, a deficiency in iron, or a deficiency in B12, or something as simple as that. And these are the things that I need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. Why would you not have that information? And why would you not be able to, support your children or your child in that way? And so I do think it'll sort of come into mainstream health. The only thing that I guess is quite complex about it, and I mean, with the way that technology and certainly sort of AI and things are moving, who knows what we'll be able to do. But there is a big human component behind what I do. And when I see people, it's not a matter of just kind of looking at your genetic blueprint and saying, oh, okay, well, you're more prone to this, that, and the next thing. And here you go, like, you just need that vitamin and see you later. You need to be able to know what's going on in that person's life right now, what, maybe is expressing itself or what's not in terms of their genetics. And that's the thing, that they're not static things. They're constantly moving and shifting with the environment. And so if somebody, for example, is more prone to a B12 deficiency, say, and they are eating, high quality animal products and have a really, well-balanced diet, even though they've got a gene that says, oh, you are more prone to a B12 deficiency, they might not have that as a deficiency. And you need to be able to interpret that, look at what's going on for them, and not just say on an automatic sort of printout or something that I'd imagine, something I know gets generated from some of the genetic testing companies and things out there where it's just automated. Hey, you need to take this supplement. And often people can do that and they don't actually need it. And then that's just a waste of your time and your resources and your money too. So for all, I do see it being something that is widespread and a lot sort of more accessible to people. I suppose the challenge there is, how do we scale that, when I believe, at least, there does need to be a human component in terms of the actual interpreting it, talking to the person, knowing and understanding their lives, knowing, what they do and don't eat, or how they do and don't move, how stressed they are, all of those kinds of things. Because, yeah, as I said, your genes aren't static. And so
I agree. Yeah, and a lot of the podcasts that I've been doing have been with clinicians who've had lived experience in these areas. So you actually delivering it, having actually done your own and experienced it yourself, and having all these anecdotes is just so much more powerful than us getting a printout. And if we're stuck in that busyness hamster wheel and we just kind of flick through it. But if you actually create that space where you have an appointment and you dedicate that time and you're totally focused and you're being delivered by someone with their expertise, their experience, their anecdotes, then it just amplifies the opportunity of, prevention or of healing or whatever the case is. So I'll be cheerleading for that. I'll definitely be cheerleading for that type of model continues. Yeah.
Yeah. And it won't work, I don't think, otherwise, because as I said, just because you're more prone to something, whether that's more, inflammation, or, as I said, like a B12 or an iron deficiency, it doesn't mean that that's what you've got in that moment. And so we need to be able to look at, as I said, the diet, the exercise, all of those kinds of things, but even like blood tests, like let's just test and see whether you've got a B12 deficiency. And often I see people that have had genetic testing via companies, they've got an automated report and they've said, hey, I needed this supplement, and they go and they get, a test for, like, I just had somebody the other day that her B12 levels are really, really high. And I was like, hey, you actually don't need that right now. I do know that, like, that's what it says in your report and all of those kinds of things. But, with what you eat and everything like that, you don't actually need that supplement. But you do know now, you've got the insight that is something that is kind of a, as a quote unquote weakness for you. That's something that you are more sort of prone to, is a B12 deficiency. But the way that you're living your life means that gene hasn't expressed itself in that way. You don't need to worry about just constantly supplementing for the rest of your life, because that is something I struggle with too. People just those blanket rules and, hey, you need this and you need that. And it's a lot more complex than that. We're not static beings. We're constantly moving and adapting and we need to be able to adjust things depending on what life stage we're at. And that probably is why I love the genetics so much, is because the actual report, your actual blueprint doesn't change. It's just the way the genes express themselves change. So, your strengths and weaknesses are always going to be yours, and you're always going to know what they are, but you're going to know, oh, I need to pull on certain, nutrition or supplements or whatever at various points, because I know that this is a weakness. But it's not a destiny that you're always going to have to take a certain supplement or whatever, which is something I see a lot, just these kind of blanket rules and advice.
I'm thinking about my own family history. So my my grandmother had breast cancer, and then my mum's had breast cancer, but two different types of breast cancer. And I really sat in my wisdom, and I knew it wasn't a genetic, and like I knew that it wasn't going to pass down to me, because I felt like I was addressing the areas that were causing the disease. And so it'd be really, really great in those circumstances, rather than, because I could have made a choice. I could have gone, well, I'm going to get breast cancer too, because my grandmother, my mum's had it. And then in a way, I'm kind of willing it into my reality. So, but having actually have that information going, well, it's not part of my genetics. So I'm not that I'm going to be blasé about it, but I don't need to put it into my worry box. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's the thing. As I said, a lot of the tests, or a lot of the genes that I look at are kind of the ones further upstream. So in regards to breast cancer, Angelina Jolie made the BRCA gene really famous, right? Freaked everybody out. A whole bunch of people decided, oh, I need to go get tested, and do I need a mastectomy? And oh gosh, this is all really scary. A lot of the genes that I actually look at are sort of upstream from that, right? So if we start to give those genes, if those are if you've got variations that they are kind of what we'd consider more of a weak point for you, maybe you're moving through like your phase 1 detox really, really quickly, and that sometimes can not be such a good thing, can cause a lot of sort of free radicals and things like that if you don't have a good phase 2 detox. But the thing for that is if we start to sort that end out, the BRCA gene doesn't even have a chance to express itself or switch on, because you're already treating the areas that are further upstream. And I guess it fits really nicely too into that ambulance at the top of the cliff approach, right? It's like, let's not be at the bottom. Like, let's go upstream, let's go up to the top and like sort things out there, because that's where prevention, that's where people's health and being able to thrive and be able to live with vitality is, rather than that, oh gosh, now we've got to do something about it, and most of the time it's kind of a band-aid or a quick fix or something. It's like, no, let's go up that way. That's, a lot more of where we can heal and understand ourselves and avoid all of the stuff that, we're told.
I'm back to that original word of yummy, because it really resonates with Heart Place Hospital. So we're uplifting our frontliners and caregiving roles so that they can access this opportunity, so that then it ripple effects off out to others. So if they've got an understanding, if they've got a celebration of their own body and mind, then they can ripple it out to others, and we have a really fast society that is thriving, and in your words, living a bright life. No, I love it. I love it, and I love sharing it. I love cheerleading you and all the others of us who are colouring outside the square or box and going against the status quo, and being brave enough to share the science and the innovation in a world where it was very, very narrow-minded. So I totally celebrate you, and I love being part of that you're part of our fold. So what I wanted to ask you now is, like, what's coming up in your heart place? What's coming up that you can share with our listeners that you're offering, or that you're co-creating or creating in your business, and how can everyone find you?
Yeah, beautiful. So for functional genetic testing, it is part of a package, a one-to-one package I've got called Body Blueprint. And what we do in that is obviously do your functional genetic test and then spend some time together actually, working through what's in it. You get support to actually implement some of those things. And as I said, we often work through one thing, other things can come up. And so we kind of, start that journey for people. But the main reason that I do it too is, so as I said, so that people have an understanding of themselves and know themselves a whole lot better, because I think that when we have that, and we have that trust, and we have that knowing, and that sort of, I guess, inner resilience, that's where we can make huge changes. And I think not only for ourselves but for others. And so I my biggest thing is allowing people to know that for themselves, have a deeper understanding of themselves, and then be able to go out and support others to kind of, you know, deepen their knowledge and their understanding of themselves too. So I do that, starting with Body Blueprint. And you can find me, or you can find all of that on my website, which is just my name, aubreynation.com. And I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook too, but very rarely on there. So I mostly hang out on Instagram, and my handle is just @AubreyNation.
Beautiful. I love it. It's all very good and exciting.
It is, it is.
Thank you so much for being on Heart Place Hospital podcast, and I look forward to sharing this far and wide so that we can extend and create the network of love and compassion in our world.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jacqui, and thank you for all that you do, for having the insight, the Mack truck moment to bring this all into fruition and into life. It's, you know, it's so needed, and I know that you know that already, but I do want to kind of make sure I reflect that back to you. What you're doing is amazing.
Thank you, Aubrey, for seeing that in me. Thank you. I appreciate that.